Well, hi, I'm Erin Brown.
I am Neghar Fanouni.
And welcome to the Nasty Women podcast, where today we are talking about periods.
Periods. Basically, like one of my favorite things. Hold on. To talk about.
Yes.
Woo! Period! Those of you not watching and just listening, I just popped open a bottle of sparkling Chenin Blanc that came in my wine club box this month. So, cheers, Erin, to
Cheers.
periods.
Cheers, I have some Ma Preco
There
Vino
we
Verde, my summer drink, but it's snowing. It's fine.
Mm. It's 71 degrees here today.
Mm. It's -3, so
Holy
cool.
shit. Wow. I walked outside to walk my dogs and I was like, wow, why am I sweating? Like I'm in sweats and like a sweatshirt. And I
Yeah,
was
I've been
like,
noticing your outfit lately.
oh,
You're one.
I, you mean my uniform?
Yes. I love it.
I have actually six of the same cardigan. It's like this is Nike sweatshirt cardigan. It's like a cross between like a streetwear and fitness attire, which is my favorite thing.
What is that
And
called? What is lifestyle active lifestyle
a-
wear?
something like
It's
that.
like a athleisure
Athleisure.
wear.
Wow, we are old. That is, yeah,
That's what all the hip cats are
yeah.
saying.
The
There you
kids
are.
these days. Yes. It's like this athleisure cardigan deal. It's like this long, you've probably seen it. I have it in like three
Yep.
colors and I have two of each color.
Good. Good.
And it's just my uniform.
That's perfect.
I just throw it on over whatever's happening. Doesn't matter what's happening. It could be like a dress, it could be like a sweat situation.
It's your signature look.
It really is.
That makes it fancy no matter what it is.
Mhm. So,
So tell me about Nagar's first period or leading up to it, or what is your like, are you there, God? It's me, Nagar.
yeah, this is what I love about Erin Brown. For those of you listening, she just goes right for it. There's no foreplay, which I appreciate. I really appreciate
I
because
mean, we talked about your cardigan, boo boo. What do you need?
I know that was the foreplay.
That
What
was
was
it.
all right. So my first period. So I got my first period when I was 11,
Oh, wow.
which is on the younger side of puberty for a lot of girls. My mom got hers when she was 9.
Wow.
So I wasn't surprised by it coming early, and it happened in the middle of the night, which is interesting because my periods now almost always happen in the middle of the night.
Hmm.
Very rarely do they happen like once this year. I remember just having one like randomly in the middle of the day on a day that I wasn't supposed to get it. And I was like, whoa. It was like 3 days early. And I was like, what is happening right now? Because I normally wake up
Yeah.
with a bloody mess. Uh, so yeah, it happened in the middle of the night, and my parents were divorced by that time. My mom wasn't around, and so it was just me and my Middle Eastern immigrant father, who I watched go through it with my sister. So I kind of knew what to expect, and I knew that it was going to be super awkward and really uncomfortable. But thankfully for me, and this is kind of interesting because like my sister and I have talked a lot recently as our relationship evolves about how she absorbed a lot of the shit
Mm-hmm.
in our family drama so that I was almost like shielded from it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole other podcast. But
Older sister here. I know
yeah,
about that.
yeah. And I was the baby and she always took care of me. And to this day, like she comes over every Sunday and cooks me dinner and does my laundry. And like, I'm like, you don't have to do that. She's like, I know, but I like doing it. It's
Aw.
the only time anyone ever takes care of me. But she had it before me. So thankfully I didn't have to go through like the whole awkward situation with my dad. I got to just go to her and be like, can I have a maxi pad? Like, I don't know what to do. And I remember that at the time, and for a long period of time, what I used, I didn't start off with tampons. What I used were I think they were Always, and they were like a maxi pad / panty liner that was folded in 3.
Mm-hmm.
It was a pink, like a pale pink
With a little
plastic,
white tab.
the little tab. Yeah. That was what I used for a long time.
And that
And
was
then
before there were wings, right?
I was just going to say, and that was before Wings. So I
Oh,
remember the whole with wings. And I was like, this is a game changer.
It really was.
It really, really was. And so I never really had to have the super awkward conversation with my dad. It was kind of just like, hey, Dad, by the way, this is happening, just so you know. And he was like, my dad and I are really close. And he was kind of like, I figured because of your moods. He was like, I've always been a very moody, sort of like emo kid. So no joke, when I was a kid, and I think I mentioned this on a previous episode, I had a sign on my door that I had printed out at the library that said, because when we were kids, we didn't have computers in our homes, right? So I printed it out at the library, and it was like black writing on a white, sheet of paper that said, "Life's a bitch, and then you die." And it was like the sign that I stuck on my bedroom door. You just put like stickers on your door and stuff like that. So it was like right in the middle of like my whole collage of personality. So I was a very like moody kid. Anyway, so I went to Planned Parenthood and I got my birth control. And then I was on birth control from then on out for the next 10 years or so. So my period has overgone quite a bit of evolution. Thankfully for me, I never grew up in a house where I was taught that it was gross or shameful, but we also didn't talk about it openly. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of that has to do with just the circumstances of growing up with a single dad and him not being in a space to feel really comfortable talking about it. And I've kind of seen that and decided that I don't want that for my kid, even though I have a boy. And Isaac knows all about periods. He's 10 and he knows. He understands the cycle. When I first explained it to him, he was like, "That's horrible." He was so empathetic. He was so just like, that happens to you every month. And he was like, "Oh my gosh." And I had to explain to him, like, it is uncomfortable, but it's also not horrible and not a curse. It's a blessing, and I welcome it. And I talk to him about it when it's happening, so that he knows to expect that I might be a little bit more emotional than I usually am, which is usually pretty emotional. And he respects that and honors that, to the point where once, it was maybe a couple months ago, we were driving home from school and we passed by Whole Foods, and I said, "Let's stop in Whole Foods and get some chocolate." And he said, "Why, Mom? Are you on your period?"
Aw. Your the horrified reaction reminded me of when Lola saw me get out of the shower once, and I have a rotating repertoire of hairstyles, but I had the full-blown pubes going on, and that terrified her. She asked if she was going to look like that, and I was like, "Well, I mean, there's options, but yet you'll get hair there." And she's like, "Does it hurt?" It never occurred to me that pubes would look painful, but apparently that was terrifying to her.
If it was quite unruly, then there might have been a fear.
It's like a buzz cut.
Oh, I'm a full bush girl.
Yeah,
I'm into full bush.
I just like I like a buzz. I like a little something. Keep it low.
Yeah,
get my edges trimmed.
I do an edge trim. I don't like, to have the sides all exposed.
Yeah.
That's a little
like
much.
That first trip to the swimming pool when it looks like you've got some spiders.
Oh, and I tried to bleach it because sometimes you're in between a wax.
So my first period was definitely just like a solo mission. And the only talk that I ever got about periods or sex or anything related to my vagine was that the tampons were under the sink. And so I started out with pads, and I was the second girl in my 6th grade class to get her period. So I was 11.
Yeah, we were both in 6th grade.
Yeah, and I was pissed that my friend Erin, also Erin, got her period first. But then we all had to act like it was such a burden, even though we were all really excited about it. So she came over and told me about it, and I was like, "Oh, that sucks," when really I was like, "I'm so jealous." And then I got my period, and then shortly thereafter, I was invited to my boyfriend's pool party and didn't think I could go and was lamenting to my mom about that. And she was like, well, you can just use a tampon. And so I went into the bathroom and found the tampons and read the instructions 6 million times. And then I proceeded to go through the entire box of tampons trying to shoot them into me. Because this is not how it works.
You know what? It's not as easy as people think it is.
No.
It's really not. It's a skill.
It is. And you can't just like aim and fire, which is what
no.
No. So it didn't go well. And I was just thinking too, another notable moment in my earlier period days was in high school when I was having a sexual relationship with a boyfriend. He would always refer to it as me being broken, which at the time I thought was funny and now is not very funny to me. But like if I wasn't up for sex, he'd be like, oh, are you broken? And he meant on my period. So there was definitely a lot of like grossness around it, and you're supposed to hide all of your things, and there's like special ways to like put your tampon into your sleeve and like roll into yourself and go to the bathroom so no one knows. So it was basically like a lot of shame and then also wasting products I didn't know how to use.
Oh, absolutely.
And
there was certainly
at the time that there were other options besides pads and tampons. No idea that there was anything else.
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot more options now than there were then. And if there were sort of like cups and like different things back then, I don't think they were as widely advertised, which I think in a lot of ways might actually point to the fact that culturally, the idea of a woman's menstrual cycle is evolving back to what it was originally intended, because there's less shame around it. There's all these companies, women-owned companies, coming out with products to collect your menses, and they're everywhere and everybody's talking about it. And I think that that's the most important thing we can do, is to continue to talk about these things. And if they're talking about it in the media because all these companies are coming out with cups and THINX Panties and all these different things, to me, that's a sign of hope, that we are as a society becoming less disgusted and less shameful and more educated and more sort of welcoming with regards to the whole cycle.
So what do you use these days?
So I actually didn't have a period for 5 years because I had an IUD. Okay. So I was on hormonal birth control for several years, over 10 years before I got pregnant. This is the funny thing. They tell you that, doctors tell you, like, if you've been on hormonal birth control for a long time and you want to get pregnant, that it could take a while. That's not always true.
No troubles.
I got pregnant my very first time having sex after getting off birth control. The very first time. Yeah. So it was my birthday, actually, was the date of conception. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, it didn't take long. And after that, I wound up kind of flip-flopping a lot with different birth controls because I couldn't really figure out, like, my whole body was just like rejecting everything, and I couldn't figure out what was right for me, and I was nursing and all this stuff. So eventually I got an IUD, and I had a hormonal IUD for 5 years, and I got it removed, I guess 3 years ago. I got it removed 3 years ago at its expiration date, and I have had such an interesting relationship with my period ever since, because I've not been on any birth control at all. I'm on the in touch with my cycle, know when I'm ovulating method. So yeah. And it's really cool. And it's not something that I ever thought would be possible or was ever even discussed with me as a possibility. So I don't know, I brought that up because you definitely weren't asking me about that, but basically by saying that I didn't get a period for a while. So I didn't get a period for a while. And prior to that, when I was getting a period, I always used tampons, always, no questions asked. When I started getting a period again, I was like, I don't like this. I don't know why I always use this, but I actually don't like it. It's uncomfortable. They never stay in. I don't know if it's my vagine doesn't like them or rejects them or what the deal is, but they don't stay in. They're super uncomfortable. I don't like the idea of having a foreign object in my body. So I started using panty liners, like thong-shaped panty liners.
Just the liner?
Just the liner. I have a really, really, really heavy day 1 and day 2. And then after that, I pretty much like, it's just spotting for like a couple more days. And I use just the liner and I change it regularly. And I only use tampons if I happen to be on my period when I'm going to the beach or the pool. Even when I go to the gym, I wear a panty liner and I'm just really cognizant of it. And the reason why I really don't like tampons is because I think that it kind of encourages you to not be aware of how much you're menstruating. And you can wind up leaving it in there for longer than I think is really necessary or advisable because you're not aware of it. Whereas if you're wearing a liner or a pad, it's very obvious to you every time you pee or whatever's going on that you are menstruating and it's time to, it also helps me be aware of the state of my flow, of how heavy my flow is. I feel like I disconnect that with a tampon. But at night, I use the THINX Panties. I sleep with the THINX Panties.
Which kind do you have?
I have like the cheeky, and then they think they're there was before they came out with the sport one, so I have this other one. So mostly I use the cheeky. I have a cheeky and like just like a brief, bikini brief. I bought the thongs, but they were too big for me.
Oh.
I don't know. I think because I always think I'm going to be a bigger size in underwear than I am because I have a huge butt, but I somehow like always forget that like thongs don't account for ass size.
Yeah.
So it's like the length of my
underwear.
So yeah. So I bought the thongs. So I have a whole bunch of them that are too big for me that have never been used that I keep trying to pass on to Jen Sinkler. And she's totally game for it, but we just keep forgetting to do the handoff.
She'll be so excited for a random name drop in the period podcast, right?
Oh,
what up, Jen?
Yeah. So that's pretty much my method is mostly panty liners, tampons only if I'm going to be in the ocean or be wearing a bikini, which is only an issue. Well, I live in California, so it's an issue quite often, but it's only rarely an issue. And THINX at night because I don't like any kind of foreign object. I just want to like put on my panties and a big t-shirt and be comfortable.
Yes.
Yeah.
I hit like 30 maybe, and all of a sudden was like, maybe stuffing bleached cotton inside of me is not a good idea. Like just all of a sudden it seemed like a terrible, terrible idea. A lot of variables.
Which, by the way,
yeah, go ahead.
If other people use tampons, we're not judging you.
Oh, yeah.
And we're not saying that you shouldn't use them.
I'm not judging your journey.
It's all personal choices. Personal choices.
Yeah, it didn't seem like a healthy idea, and all of a sudden felt like a really bad choice. And that's just like what I was experiencing in my body and intuitively, and has nothing to do with science. So do you? But especially like I have a similar flow to you, day 1 and day 2. Particularly day 1, I'm just like stabby and need to be left alone and swaddling myself. But after that, it's not much. And so those days were the worst with the tampon because often I would be changing them and it was like dry. And there's just like nothing that feels worse than that like that just dry cotton coming out of your wants to be moist vagina. It's just so angry at me. Plus, like, not good for the environment. And I'm sorry, if I'm going to use a tampon, I'm going to use a nice, silky smooth plastic applicator because those cardboard assholes are like the dry ones coming out, but going in.
Dude,
so
and
awful.
in most other countries, they don't even use an applicator. They have those little bullets.
Like
They're just like, it's just like a little bullet with no applicator. I remember being in Australia and needing tampons and not being able to find any tampons with an applicator because we were like at the beach. It was summer in Australia. We were at the beach the whole week. And I was like, I need tampons, only those little things. And when I talk to like other Australian girls or really anyone that doesn't live in the US, they're like, you guys have applicators? They're just like, what is that? Like those things you got to like really push all the way up in there.
Well, and again, if you've been just like drying it out. Also, I should let you know that I have a really complicated relationship with cotton balls, such that like my personal hell would be sitting in a room full of cotton balls, specifically with somebody just like pulling them apart. So like the sound and the feel of cotton in that form just grosses me out.
So the scene in Elf where he's eating the cotton balls, does that just like, are you crazy?
So bad. So bad. So yeah, I did pads for a while, but I hate pads. I hate how they sound. I hate that they feel like diapers. I hate that crinkle. Like I feel like, hey, everybody listen to the absorbent thing I have in my crotch. Like,
Yeah.
It's not embarrassing to me so much as it's just like I don't need my period to make noises, you know? This is my journey, not yours. So now I'm all about the things, and I brought mine to show for people who are watching. But I
want
love
to the high-waisted. I want the high-waisted.
I love the high-waisted.
Yes,
They're so
I'm getting
pretty.
those next.
They're my prettiest panties. So I told my husband I got period panties, and then of course was like walking around the house, and then like the vixen that I am, he was like, "What do you mean?" he didn't get it. So they don't look like diapers. No. They look like regular underwear, and they're pretty, but he just didn't understand why I had like new lacy underwear for when I was on my period. Yeah. And then I have the sport too, and the heavy flow ones that just have the lace band, but they're all I use now, even on my heavy days. Unless I'm going to go swimming or something, but again, that's kind of rare.
Right. And I think, and for those of you that may not know about the THINX Panty, full disclosure, we're not sponsored by THINX. So
no, but we would love to be.
We would love to be, but we're not. But they each come, like the different types of panties come with like different levels of absorbency. So they'll say like this particular model of panty can absorb 1.5 tampons worth, which I think is like the only proper unit of measurement when like current modern unit of measurement when it comes to measuring your flow. And so they do actually really work. For any of you who've been considering them, full endorsement on my part, and I think Erin's as well. They work really well, and they're extremely comfortable, and they're easy to wash and easy to deal with. But there are so many other methods for collecting menses that I've never tried. Like I've never tried the cup. Have you ever tried the cup?
No, but I'll tell you why. So I looked into the cup before I got the THINX, because that seemed like the next thing I was aware of and the next good bet, and then found out there's like local folklore. So sorry if this person is listening. I don't actually know who she is, but someone who knows lots of people that I know who tell the story of a woman who ended up in the hospital with toxic shock syndrome from her cup. Oh. And I thought erroneously, just because the only time I hear about toxic shock syndrome is on the tampon box, that was because of the tampon. But
it's
really,
the bacteria.
It's the blood. Yeah. And so I was like, well, that makes sense. That's why I don't want a tampon. Like it wants out. I want it out. I want it to get out of me and move on.
It does. It does want out, which is why it's also so important to have a period. And if you're not having a period, to address that. And if your period isn't quote unquote normal, because I hate using that word because what really is normal, but if you're not having a regular cycle, like that's usually an indication of something. Right. It's usually an indication of external forces such as an IUD or some kind of hormonal intervention, or there's a health situation, or in a lot of more metaphysical and spiritual sort of traditions, there's like a stagnancy, an emotional stagnancy, or there's something. So I think that the menses wants out because it wants to make room for new growth, literally and figuratively. Yeah,
so I saw I see an energy worker like every other week, and I trade with her, which is great. So I have this ongoing energy work, which I love. But I came in and she asked if there were any presenting issues, and I'm usually like, just whatever, just see what's going on. But that day I was like, oh my God, I was so mad. And then I got my period and felt better. So whatever, we'll see what comes up. And she was like, well, that's like the whole thing with periods, which was new to me and makes so much sense. But she was like the PMS time where like a lot of women get really hormonal and sometimes angry or irritable, aggravated. She's like, that's all of the stuff that you need to be looking at and releasing and working through. And then your period comes and you're ready to release it. And without that information, the basic level of what I have experienced in the past is that all that stuff comes up, and then I get my period and immediately feel relief because I'm like, oh, that's why I was a raging asshole. Yeah. I get it now.
Absolutely.
So to think of that as being like releasing those things is amazing. And then in the tradition of witches, that is specifically all of the things that are supposed to come to the surface so that you can release it, and your body is physically releasing cells, but that you can release energy with it. And even if you're not like into that stuff, that's a really cool way to invite your period. And again, like, you don't have to like your period. It's kind of like, I loved being pregnant and having a little baby in there and all of that, and also hated morning sickness, and that I couldn't wear my shoes anymore because my feet were swollen beyond belief. And so it's okay to like have multiple feelings about this stuff. You don't have to like fully embrace all of it, but it is nice to give sort of a fresh perspective to, there is some purpose to this. And for me, having a spiritual purpose to it is nice. But even just thinking of it as like the way that you're naturally being cleansed and releasing things, that's like a science way to approach it. But there's nice ways to look at it outside of this like nasty chore, ant flow, all the other ridiculous things we call it once a month.
I know. So ridiculous. I have just started being like really like blatant and forthright about it. I'm not secretive about it. I'm just like, I'm menstruating. I don't know what to tell you. I'm ovulating. I talk about it all the time. And I think that it's really interesting. You mentioned, this idea of like sort of release and letting stuff go. And there's a reason why in folklore and in cultures across the globe, spanning centuries, women have always been associated with the moon. So there's always been this sort of female archetype, moon sort of connection that very much has to do with the fact that a woman's cycle is typically, not always, but the average 28 days. And that's the same cycle of the moon. And there is a lot of this, there's different theories about it, but there are ways that you can sort of link up your cycle with the moon cycle. And I think that to me, that's just so fascinating.
Right.
And that's kind of the thing for me that started getting me actually like interested in my period. I was like, oh, there's something sort of astronomical, metaphysical. There's like something about this that's very spiritual, that even if it's not, it's like one of the few things in modern culture that we can look at that has both a very strong scientific base as well as a very strong spiritual base. And for me, that was enough reason for me to like explore and look at from both a scholarly standpoint as well as a spiritual standpoint.
So I got to see this year when I went to the Goddess Gathering, which is like a witch camp thing, which is a long story how I ended up at that thing. But,
we'll talk about that in another episode.
Yeah, we'll get that. It was a surprise to me, and no one else apparently. But anyway, I was at witch camp, and on the last day when they do rituals, there's rites of passage for different women. So there's the maiden, mother, crone, and then women who are being inducted into each of those phases of womanhood go through a rite of passage. And this year there were like 5 young girls who had had their first period, so they were moving from maidenhood to motherhood. And in that tradition, motherhood is not necessarily about having children, but about a period in your life where your responsibility is to mother, is to think about the environment and think about children and think about nurturing. And so that's that tradition. But oh my gosh, I got so emotional and hadn't expected to, because all of the crones and mothers were allowed to write little like nuggets of wisdom, and the maidens who were moving to mother came around with like a little basket and got their little wisdom, and then they got in a line, and my friend Kim, who's a high priestess who isn't doing the ceremony, gave them some lovely words and talked about how this used to be seen as powerful, and then it was feared, but we are the only thing that can bleed and doesn't die, and how powerful that is. And then one by one, she asked for their name and stated their name, and we all said, "We witness you." And so like it was just like a woman coming to her own with a huge group of like, I don't know, 150 women being like, "We witness you." And I was like, oh, this is so much better than the tampons are under the sink.
Yeah.
Which is so great.
And like, you get to take Lola through that. So that's really beautiful. Like it is certainly something to honor, certainly not something to be ashamed of, not something to feel that you need to hold secret. And it is, I think, in a lot of ways private.
Sure.
In that in the way that it is your journey and it's your exploration of your own body, but it's not secret or shameful. And I think that that's something that we can really start to teach to our children, male and female, because like if the boy that you dated in high school who called you broken when you were on your period had been taught by his mother that his period, or a woman's period, not his period, if only a woman's period, a woman's menstrual cycle was this beautiful thing, this beautiful life-giving cycle, then I think that you could have had a better experience. And so I think the best thing we can do is just educate and not be afraid to talk about it and not be afraid to talk to our kids about it.
Oh, yeah. They need like all the information.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even if it's just like this is the proper way to put in a tampon, if that's what we're using in this house. So we need that information, and then you don't have to waste a whole box of tampons.
And I agree, and I think that that's especially wasteful. And I think that having the information is the most important thing, because whether you choose to use tampons or be on birth control or use a cup or menstruate, like there are a lot of women, and I don't know if you've ever read the book Way of the Happy Woman. I think you would really like it. It's a really interesting book that talks about the cycles of menstruation, but also the seasons and how the seasons match up to self-care and a woman's menstrual cycle. And the author suggests, the name is eluding me at the moment, but the author suggests that you use non-disposable, reusable. That's the opposite. Reusable maxi pads, and then soak them in jars of water and then reuse them, right? Because that's obviously, like, it really is the most environmentally friendly option that does require a lot of work, which is probably what used to be done. But soak them in these jars of water and then use those jars of Menses water to water your plants or like give life to other things. And when I first read that, I read this book maybe 3 years ago, and I was like, I'm on board with all this other shit you're talking about, but that's fucking gross, and I'm not doing that. I was so anti. I was just like, how dare you suggest that I should just have jars of Menses water sitting around my house and it's so interesting because in the 3 years that I've had a period without hormonal birth control, I think I've gotten closer and closer to accepting that. I've gotten to the point where I'm like, maybe that's the next thing I might just try out. So my point being, and if you listen to this podcast regularly, you know I happen to be quite verbose. But my point being that having all the information, having all the options is, I think, what's most important. Because when you think that birth control is the only way, which for some people it's the best way for them. But if you think that birth control is the only way, if you think that, synthetic tampons are the only way, if you think that shame around your cycle is the only way, that's when you're limited. And that's when you can't really explore your body and your journey in a way that feels very free.
And this is definitely going to have to be a two-parter because there are so many things we wanted to talk about that we didn't get to. But we do need to sort of come to a close, so I wanted to read you a couple of quick passages if you're down. One of them is from Cunt, A Declaration of Independence, which is an amazing book. If you're watching, I'll show you it. Like, it's so pretty.
I love Cunt is one of my favorite words.
It's a good word.
I've drank half a bottle.
Oh my gosh, you're doing it.
Go to the gym after this.
She says, but you're just doing pull-ups. You'll be fine. You're going to do the best pull-ups. You better put that on the gram or something.
Stronger when I'm drunk, usually.
She says, by honoring the demands of our bleeding, our blood gives us something in return. The crazed bitch from irritation hell recedes. In her place arises a side of ourselves with whom we may not at first be comfortable. She is vulnerable, highly perceptive genius who can ponder a given issue and take her world by storm. When we're quiet and bleeding, we stumble upon solutions to dilemmas that have been bugging us all month. Inspiration hits and moments of epiphany rumba across the tundra of our senses. In this mode of existence, one does not feel antipathy towards bodily ritual that so profoundly reinforces our cunt power. Yes.
Love that. That is amazing.
And then this is a quick one, but it's by Jeanette Winterson. She wrote Oranges Aren't the Only Fruit. And this is, I think she's speaking of a lover, but she says, when she bleeds, the smells I know change color. There is iron in her soul on those days. She smells like a gun. What? Those are my favorite as I was
Which is amazing, because the more in touch you get with your menstrual cycle, the more you notice the changes in your own like flora. Mm-hmm. I absolutely notice. I can usually tell when I'm about to menstruate because I can smell it. Mm-hmm.
And it's so not a bad smell. It's just like, oh,
no, it's just different. It's just different. So on the next episode, a periods part 2, we'll discuss sort of how to track your cycle without hormonal birth control and get in touch, and how that relates to the moon, and some of the history of why we got to this place where periods were determined to be disgusting in the first place.
Yes.
Yeah.
More on periods next time.
Yeah.
And maybe more wine. It's always great talking to you.
You too, Erin. I love you to death.
I love you. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.